Welcome, everyone, to the Contact Center Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. Today, we've got a really special guest here with Lisa Del Fabbro. And Lisa, you have been working in the apparel industry, I won't say for how long, but for a long time. And you've actually come up the ranks. You started as an agent. You now manage agents. You manage the operations. You report up to the C-suite board. You've got a lot of responsibilities. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about, the overarching kind of theme today, is why do CX leaders fail? What are some of the things, the fundamentals that have really shifted, like with the upgrades in technology and AI and expectations, really, of the contact center, away from just, we're a cost center, we're necessarily evil. Obviously, we have questions coming in from customers. We need somebody to answer them. There's really so much more to that. And I think that's one of the most important things of when we're garnering resources internally and advocating for ourselves, we have to show greater and greater impact on the overall business, right down to bottom line revenue. And you're going to talk about that today as well. So with that, maybe just expand a little bit more on your background and then we'll jump right in.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be here and speak about the day-to-day that I've been a part of for the last 5 or 6 years. Actually, my experience in the industry goes back to when I was in my late stages of schooling and worked in store and had first-hand experience of the retail and apparel industry. And then years later, I transitioned to B2B wholesale, working and selling to retailers throughout Canada and the United States. And over the pandemic, as we know, the mass layoffs hit, and I had an opportunity to actually take a role as a CX agent in a pre-loved luxury handbag company that was challenging in itself, thinking that it was on an entry level for the stage of life and my career that I was in. But it turned out to be a huge blessing. During that time, I got certified in digital marketing, and ever since I've transitioned to CX digital experience.
That's fantastic. We'll talk about this as well, but the frontline agent is so important in so many ways, which sounds like an understatement, of course, but how they're fully utilized and managed and their importance to the overall company and the company's growth is instrumental. So what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to have you go to the core underlying theme of what we're going to talk about here today. Why do CX leaders fail? What's your thoughts on that subject?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the value that agents have and the impact that they have on the business is sometimes undermined within organizations. Making their role as efficient and their day-to-day as efficient using technology, listening to the customer and their pain points is essential to the success of the department and essentially relating to all other aspects of the business. So whether we're using AI to translate and write out a voicemail so that they don't have to sit there and listen to it, if we're using our NPS score to identify operational pain points, and our help desk as well, our CSAT will give us a good indication of the satisfaction of the customer, as well as how efficient we are in responding to their requests accurately. So all of that kind of helps in altogether to provide an excellent experience to the consumer.
So what is one of the things that, in your opinion, is why within that environment a CX leader would fail? What are they missing out? What are they not taking advantage of that they should be?
I think firsthand, I would say listening to the agents and further being in the agent's shoes, dealing with the escalations, being involved in the day-to-day of the customer communication is essential that I don't think a higher level role requires, but is essential to the success of the department. So leveraging any kind of tool that the agent would be more efficient with would be something that leaders miss out on. And only knowing what those agents go through on a day-to-day basis and how their flow with operations would be, how automation in the system is set up, it's essential that they have that direct communication with the consumer. So taking the escalations, being involved in those conversations, and then leveraging those pain points to find efficiencies and create a seamless experience that way. I do this on a daily basis where I'm involved in customer communication, and I encourage the team to escalate problematic tickets and discussions with the consumer that really provides us with a lot of insight as to the voice of the customer, what their pain points are, and we work backwards from there. AI is obviously a huge topic right now everywhere. It's hard to navigate. There's so many ways you can apply it. We have firsthand experience with onboarding an AI that was front-facing to the customer and it went rogue, promising donations, setting up meetings with our partnership team and giving out promises. So being able to really dig through that and catch it versus not being connected in those conversations is essential. So maybe we leverage AI in another way to optimize the efficiency of our team. Maybe it transcribes our voicemails or it summarizes our calls or conversations with customers so that the team is more efficient. There's also ways of having it suggest a potential response that the agent can copy and paste. Being involved directly with the customer gives you the ability to work backwards and not only catch issues, but be efficient at resolving them.
I got a picture in my mind as you were talking there. You ever see horses that have the blinders so they don't get distracted by maybe the crowds at a parade or something like that? Without keeping in touch with the agents who have their pulse on what's happening and the feedback that could come into the business, especially around new product launches and things like that, or external factors in the market that are affecting our ability to sell or whatever it is. I've interviewed C-suite leaders that make it a regular part of their job every day to talk to the agents directly because they want to have that feedback. And that feedback comes in qualitative forms, but there's also lots of data. With the technology, we have tons and tons of data. Tell me a little bit about how you're using data in the tech stack and how you put through all that data clutter to get to the nuggets, to get to the information that you can make decisions on and act upon.
Yeah, we wouldn't be this efficient without our data. And after our first discussion and reviewing our notes, it was hard for me to separate the data from the other pillars of the discussion because it touches literally everything within our business. And without that, we can't make accurate decisions. Typically, an NPS score will help us solve operational issues, shipping delays, take a proactive approach to trickle that into the operations side. Our help desk really gives us a CSAT, a feel of what the customer is saying, and also how efficient we can be. When it comes to reviews, we take that and we have a loop back to our product team on how we can improve. Really knowing your business and understanding what the landscape is within it, it's easier to pinpoint what we need to look at throughout this data. For example, one of our brands is a performance sock company. We do all kinds of socks, and you don't really think about your socks until you put these ones on. But any running, hiking, golf, whatever kind of sock you need to match the performance and the movements within that sport. We're going through returns, and a $400 return comes in. So $400 of socks, that's quite a large number. So if you can set thresholds and automate some notifications based on the landscape of your business to what is normal, what is abnormal, and then identify those and drill down on the ones that are abnormal is a great way to leverage the data, hear the customer, and apply as needed.
I love that. You wouldn't have been able to set those parameters if you weren't tracking the data. When we talk about data, you talk about making decisions based on revenue sacrifices. You talked about that previously, and longevity. What exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah, so we believe in creating a customer-centric approach. We're not just on the defense in terms of answering the customer to whatever inquiries that they have, but we really have a seat at the table when it comes to strategizing and decision making, being the voice of the customer in the room so that when we're planning promotions, when a new privacy policy comes up, down to how the content of the actual garment online, and consumers nowadays are so educated as to what they're buying and they really do want those details. So taking a proactive approach and being the voice of the consumer within the business is essential. We've worked with brands that have had a very strict return policy that saw returns as a sacrifice of revenue. However, we know the consumer especially in apparel and garments. They want to be able to get their money back if it doesn't fit. Creating a seamless exchange program as well. It makes it easy for the consumer to trust that if they're not satisfied with the product, they have options to get the right product that fits them or change for a completely different item. So being in the room when these decisions are made is essential to knowing the voice of the customer and what they're expecting from us versus making decisions based on what's going to drive revenue. So those hand in hand, obviously, we need to make revenue. We are a business. Having that makes it more seamless for the customer, and we see a higher LTV when we do that.
You talk about having a seat at the table and providing insights to different departments. Did you have to earn that seat at the table? Was there skepticism at the beginning? Is it part of just the culture of your company? Tell us a little bit about how you earn that seat at the table and keep it.
Yeah, I think I'm really grateful for the leaders that I work with because they do understand that it's important for CX to be involved in these conversations. Communicating the value between different departments is also essential, like keeping the two continuous throughout and trickle through the business. An example of this is an out of stock product or e-com launching a new tool without communicating it to the CX team. So for us to be able to efficiently respond to the customer, we need to have the information before the launch so that we can accurately trickle that down to the customers. Like I said, out of stock, we won't be getting for X amount of time. We can strategize internally on providing the customer with different options. Even like on product pages, what information needs to be there. Our team doesn't work 24 hours a day. We have a relatively small team for the volume that we carry. So how do we provide the e-com team with the pain points and what is needed to fix them so that when the customer is on the site, they have all the information that they need to convert? Consumers nowadays don't want to wait till Monday morning before we respond. So how do we spoon feed that information on the PDPs, for example, so that the customer doesn't lose interest and doesn't go to a competitor?
You talked about feeding the team with data that enables conversions. That's, I think, the area you just started talking about here. Can you explain a little bit more or maybe even give another example of what you're talking about?
Essentially, what we want to do is reduce friction for the customer. An example that I can think of is, let's say, sizing charts, having that accurately be represented, privacy policy, returns policy, the UX of how all this information sits on the site. And like I said, consumers are so educated that we really have to think about how much information they need to not only trust your brand, but to convert.
Fantastic. You've talked about CX mentality versus CS mentality and what the difference is. Can you explain that a bit?
Yeah, I think it's hugely important to communicate that value internally and throughout CX as a role within multiple different industries. It's definitely misunderstood, but for me, I see it as a proactive approach to the interaction of a customer. We can see if a customer has been a lifelong customer versus a first-time customer, and treating those differently is very important to the success of the business. But with that being said, it really is end to end. You can be speaking to a customer at any point of their journey. So it's really not just reactive in terms of customer service and answering a question, but it's a holistic approach to how the brand and our agents are interacting with consumers at any given stage of their journey. Also quantifying their impact. We track the revenue of agents on the business weekly and quarterly. Any pre-sales tickets that convert, we can see how much revenue that's generating. So taking it as a CX versus CS, it's really important to understand that there's a bigger picture here, and it can definitely relate to how we drive revenue, but communicating that value internally and being able to quantify that is essential.
You just talked about tracking revenue by agents. And that's one of the points we want to connect is how the CX experience impacts revenue. And here you are tracking into the agent level. I think that's incredible. Is there more that you can say or talk to about how you track that and what you do with that data?
So that data is presented to C-suite, C-level, just to reinforce the purpose of our business, justify that it's not a cost or an expense. It's actually the opposite. I think that's huge in what we do in terms of reporting. And then how do we track the growth of that revenue? How do we coach and mentor our agents to be able to grow that revenue? On the flip side, also, it doesn't necessarily have to be directly tied to revenue. It could also be loyalty, leveraging those touch points with the consumer for the agent to be like, thank you for having a good experience or buying our brand. Did you know you earn X amount of loyalty points on your order? So that if they're satisfied with the product, they're going to come back and spend those loyalty points, log into their account. So revenue is one thing, and we can definitely track that. And how do we track the growth to communicate that internally? But also, our loyalty program is a huge part of that. Enabling our Try Now program. The CX team facilitates the Try Now program and handles that operationally with our warehouse and shipping. Essentially, it's a differentiator for us. It allows the customer to try the product for 30 days and to pay when that term is finished, and they can always return it if they're not satisfied. So facilitating that and tracking how many conversions and how many satisfied customers we had from that program is also a way to demonstrate that our team can help facilitate revenue.
I love that. So what are some of the KPIs that you look at most when you're tracking revenue?
We have a way of tracking pre-sales tickets, what that conversion is, and direct revenue within our help center. So that's huge, and that's the way we leverage our tools to collect data. Our help center is incredible. I'm a huge fan. It's called Gorgeous. They've recently come out with conversion tools, so we can trigger promo campaigns based on any number of different elements, exit intent, upselling to hit a shipping threshold, that kind of thing. And that's all under CX as well. So we're looking forward to really utilizing that aspect of our help desk, which is also going to help the customer convert and make them more aware of the programs that we have to offer, which is under the management of the CX team.
We've talked about so much here. Tell me something that you're most proud of, that you've been able to do or accomplish or be a part of the team. What would that be?
That's a really good question. I think diving headfirst in AI and being so early in the game, whether it succeeds or fails, we learn so much from those experiences. So I'm proud to have adopted that fairly early, regardless of the outcome. It really taught us a lot. But I think just being a part of the Lamour team and working with the different departments and people, like especially our agents, that's probably what I'm most proud of.
We talked a lot also about agents. And if I could ask you a question and how you rate it first on a scale of 1 to 10, okay? 1 is not important at all. 10 is vital to the overall growth and vitality of the business. And that question is, how important are the agents to the overall growth and vitality of the business? 1, not important. 10, vital.
12. They're 12 in my eyes.
And why would you break the scale?
Because I understand that the empathy and the patience it takes to turn an unhappy customer into a happy customer. And we all know the stats on if your friend would recommend a product, how likely are you to purchase that product? And that's essential to any business. We know CX has a lot of high turnover. It's really important to value the people that have the ability to do that and to put a happy face on the customer and be empathetic to a consumer when they're coming to you.
In an environment where AI is taking some of the easier tickets and the harder tickets are coming over to the agents. In one respect, the quality of the agent and the training for that agent, and we're asking the agent to do, is just increasing in complexity. At the same time, we're trying to understand what is the role of the live agent. Will AI take over? But you've talked a lot about empathy. And I've yet to see any AI system that could really be empathetic, be intuitive to understand and listen identify trends across even the conversation with one customer. What's your point of view on AI, and actually, is it a threat to the job of a live agent, or are we always going to need live agents?
We will always need live agents. So empathy and picking up on sentiment is one aspect of it. Escalations will always need our agents to address escalations for sure. They will always have a part in overseeing any kind of AI function that we implement. And further, how do we use their time? If AI is driving efficiency, how do we use their time to help optimize their firsthand experience? On the flip side, it's funny, I was speaking to a CX director the other day on a call, and he said he freed up so much time within efficiency. It wasn't necessarily related to AI, but just efficiency, that they would personally reach out to consumers with abandoned carts and make that connection human to human to help drive revenue. And I thought that was a fantastic idea. We've seen a lot of success in it. So how do we leverage AI to create efficiency, to have the agent be able to deal with the escalations or whichever issue that we're facing with the consumer? And on the flip side, how do we utilize their free time by creating that efficiency to help the business and optimize our tools? To answer your question, we will always be there. Human interaction is unbeatable. AI can help, but only to a certain extent.
Yeah, I've never heard anybody at any job say, I've got so much time to be proactive. I've got one final question for you. And that question is, if there was one single takeaway that you had for the folks that were watching or listening into the podcast here that you wanted them to remember, what would that be?
It would be that CX is an essential part within the business and that it touches every single department and has an impact on every single department in a very positive and proactive way. It's not just about driving revenue, but it's also being the voice of the customer within those departments as well, so that you can connect with your customer on a brand level.
Fantastic. Words of wisdom. Thank you for sharing all your experiences here and point of view. And if people had follow-up questions, would it be appropriate that we gave them a link to your profile on LinkedIn to reach out?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Lisa, for coming on. And we really enjoyed everything you had to say here. And I hope that you get a lot of chance to talk to a lot of people that would have questions.
Hope so too. Thank you.